small hall was buzzing with activity as volunteers hurried around, arranging chairs, setting up tables, and putting up colorful banners for the charity event. People from all walks of life were arriving: families, journalists, some well-dressed guests whose presence carried an air of importance. The event was meant to raise funds for children with disabilities, and it promised fancy speeches, smiling photos, and applause. But for one young girl sitting in a wheelchair by the side of the room, the event felt less like a celebration and more like a reminder of how different her life was from the people around her. She was small, barely reaching the height of a chair, with a thin frame that seemed fragile. Her hands rested lightly on the wheels of her chair, and her eyes followed every movement in the room. She was used to being ignored in crowded places, used to people looking past her as if she were invisible. But today, she had to be visible. Not for herself, but for her mother, who had spent countless days and nights caring for her, worrying for her, and sacrificing so much of her own life to make sure her daughter could live with dignity. The girl had grown to understand that her mother's world revolved around her, and yet her mother rarely complained. There was a quiet strength in her, a strength that the girl admired and loved. More than anything else, the event hall suddenly grew quieter as a well-dressed man entered. He was tall, confident, and carried himself like someone who was used to being noticed. Cameras flashed instantly, and a few people whispered his name. He was a billionaire, famous for his wealth, his business empire, and his carefully curated image in the public eye. Many looked at him with awe, others with curiosity, and some with suspicion. But for the young girl, he was just another adult who didn't know her story yet. Her mother noticed him too. She had prepared herself to stay in the background, to keep her daughter safe from the chaos of attention. She held the girl's hand gently and whispered, "Just stay calm. Don't draw too much attention." But the girl's eyes were already fixed on the billionaire. She felt a strange pull, a sense that this man could hear her, could understand her in a way that no one else had. Her mind raced with possibilities. Maybe he could help. Maybe he couldn't. But if she didn't try, she would always regret it. The girl took a deep breath and wheeled herself forward. Her movements were deliberate, careful, but also determined. Each push of the wheel brought her closer to the center of attention, and she felt the heat rise to her cheeks as people started to notice her. The mother's hand tightened on hers for a brief moment, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. The girl ignored the murmurs and the sudden hush in the room. She had a message to deliver, a truth that needed to be spoken, and nothing else mattered. When she reached the front, the billionaire looked down at her with mild surprise. His expression was polite, measured almost as if he were expecting a perfectly rehearsed line or a compliment. But what he saw instead was a girl who looked straight into his eyes with a seriousness far beyond her years. She didn't speak immediately. She only took a moment, gathering courage, feeling the weight of what she was about to say. Her voice was soft but steady as she finally spoke. "Don't save me. Save my mom first." The words were simple, almost shocking in their clarity. The room went silent. Volunteers froze mid-step. Photographers hesitated, and even the billionaire blinked, momentarily caught off guard. It was not a speech about her illness, not a plea for herself, not a rehearsed line to attract sympathy. It was a selfless, heartfelt request that placed her mother's well-being above her own. For a brief moment, he didn't respond. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the honesty in her eyes, the love that had driven her to speak those words. There was no manipulation, no agenda, no desire for attention. Just a child expressing the deepest truth she carried in her heart. He felt something stir inside him, a mixture of surprise, respect, and a subtle ache. He realized that wealth, power, and influence were meaningless compared to the bond between a mother and her child. A bond that nothing could replace or buy. The girl's mother watched, feeling a lump in her throat. She had taught her daughter to be brave, to speak up when it mattered. But she had never imagined her child would capture the attention of someone so powerful in such a profound way. Her eyes glistened with tears, a mix of pride, fear, and hope. She whispered to herself, "I just want her to be safe. I want her to be happy." She had given everything to her daughter, and now she hoped that someone else might help shoulder a fraction of the burden. People in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Some were touched, others confused. Few had ever seen such raw honesty in a place usually dominated by smiles and applause. The girl's words were not meant to impress anyone, but they left an impression that no one in that room would forget. They were a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the heaviest truths, and that listening with your heart often matters more than listening with your ears. The billionaire finally leaned forward slightly, his expression changing from polite surprise to genuine attention. He asked gently, "Can you tell me why you said that?" His tone was calm, respectful, and patient, as if he understood that the answer was important. The girl's eyes shone with determination as she began to explain. She spoke about her mother's sacrifices, the nights spent awake tending to her, the financial struggles they faced, and the emotional toll that often went unseen. She told him about the little things her mother did that went unnoticed, holding her hand through panic attacks, reading her favorite stories, even skipping meals so she could eat. Every word painted a picture of love, dedication, and quiet heroism. As she spoke, the billionaire listened without interruption. He nodded occasionally, absorbing every detail. He realized that this was not a story of need alone. It was a story of devotion, resilience, and a love so profound that it demanded recognition. In that moment, he felt a sense of responsibility, not as a businessman or a philanthropist, but as a human being, witnessing another human being's courage and sacrifice. The mother, standing close by, felt a mixture of relief and vulnerability. She had spent so many years protecting her daughter, shielding her from the harshness of the world, and yet here she was, exposed in front of someone who could make a real difference. She worried about how the billionaire would react, whether he would dismiss them, offer a token donation, or perhaps even patronize them. But the way he listened, the way his eyes followed her daughter's words, gave her a sense of cautious hope. After the girl finished speaking, there was a long pause. The billionaire took a deep breath and smiled, not in a casual, empty way, but a smile that conveyed understanding, empathy, and something almost unspoken, a recognition of the girl's courage and her mother's unwavering love. He reached out, not with money, not with promises, but with a simple question. How can I help? It was the first time anyone had asked them that question without conditions, without a press release attached, without expecting anything in return. The girl's mother blinked, unsure how to respond. She had become accustomed to people offering help in ways that served themselves more than her family. She looked at her daughter, who gave a small, hopeful nod, as if to say, "This is the moment we've been waiting for." In that moment, the hall felt different. The noise, the cameras, the formalities, they all faded away. What remained was a connection between a young girl, her devoted mother, and a man who, for the first time, truly saw them. It was not about charity in the conventional sense. It was about recognizing human worth, the sacrifices people make for those they love, and the power of a single voice to command attention in a way no money could, as the crowd started to move again. Resuming their polite chatter and applause, the girl and her mother were no longer invisible. They had left an impression that could not be erased. The billionaire, too, felt a subtle shift within himself, a reminder that wealth could do much, but understanding, compassion, and genuine human connection could do even more. The girl returned to her mother's side, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. She had spoken her truth, and for the first time, she felt like someone in that room really understood her world. Her mother squeezed her hand gently, whispering, "You were brave today." The girl smiled, knowing that bravery was not about grand gestures, but about speaking from the heart, even when the world was watching. And the billionaire, watching from a short distance, carried the girl's words with him. They lingered in his mind long after the event ended, reminding him that true impact begins with listening, and that sometimes the simplest requests spoken with honesty and love can awaken something in people that no fortune can buy. After the charity event ended, the hall slowly emptied. People left with smiles, handshakes, and polite farewells. But the young girl and her mother remained seated for a few minutes longer, letting the noise fade and enjoying the quiet that followed. The mother held her daughter's hand gently, her mind spinning with thoughts about what had just happened. She had never expected anyone, not even someone as powerful as the billionaire, to truly hear them. For the first time in a long time, she felt like they might have a chance to change things, a chance for life to feel a little lighter. The girl, still sitting in her wheelchair, stared at the empty stage where the speeches had taken place. She thought about her words, about how she had spoken without fear, and about the weight they carried. She had wanted to protect her mother, to make sure she had someone to care for her as much as she had cared for the girl all these years. The mother noticed her daughter's gaze and leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You were brave today," she said softly. "You said exactly what mattered." Later that evening, after they returned home, the mother made a cup of tea while the girl rested, her hands still feeling the strength from the pushes of her wheelchair. The house was small, filled with memories and warmth, but also the quiet tension of everyday struggles. Bills sat on the table, unopened, and medical supplies were scattered across a corner. The mother glanced around, feeling both pride and worry. She had raised her daughter to be courageous, but she worried about the attention they had drawn. Would someone help? Would they just walk away? She sighed and sat down beside her daughter. The next morning, there was an unexpected knock at the door. The mother opened it to find a well-dressed assistant standing there, holding a folder and smiling politely. "Good morning," the assistant said. "Mr. the Billionaire asked me to deliver this. He would also like to visit for a short while, if that is all right." The mother's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at her daughter, who looked at her with wide eyes, a mixture of excitement and nerves. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "Yes, you may come in." The assistant led them through the living room and into a small sitting area. Soon, the billionaire arrived, not with cameras, flashbulbs, or a crowd, but quietly, simply. He shook their hands, looking directly at both mother and daughter, as if he had left all formalities behind at the door. There was no rush, no agenda, just presence. He sat down and smiled. "I wanted to understand better what you meant yesterday," he said. "I want to know what life is really like for you and how I can help in a way that matters." His tone was gentle but earnest. The mother blinked, feeling a strange mix of hope and disbelief. It was one thing to speak to him at an event, surrounded by people, and quite another to have him sit in her home, asking about their lives with genuine interest. The girl looked at him, studying his face. She wanted to make sure he really understood her words, that he saw her mother not as a caregiver, but as a person who deserved care too. She began to describe their days' early mornings, filled with medical routines, afternoons of therapy and appointments, and evenings where her mother would read stories or simply sit beside her to share quiet moments. She spoke about the challenges of accessibility, the frustration of doors that were too narrow, sidewalks that were too high, and public places that seemed designed to exclude her. The billionaire listened intently, nodding occasionally, asking thoughtful questions. He asked about the little things that often went unnoticed, the fatigue in her mother's eyes, the meals skipped, the nights spent awake tending to her needs. The mother felt her eyes fill with tears, not from sadness, but from the relief of being truly seen and heard. She had carried these moments alone for so long, and now someone was acknowledging them without judgment or distraction. The girl continued, sharing stories of her mother's quiet heroism. She told him about the first time she had fallen seriously ill, how her mother had refused to leave her side, sleeping in a small chair beside her bed, comforting her with soft words and gentle touches. She spoke about the times she had felt frustrated, angry, or sad, and how her mother had always found ways to encourage her, even when she herself was exhausted. Each story painted a picture of love that was unbreakable, a bond forged through hardship and unwavering care. The billionaire leaned back, absorbing every word. He felt a deep respect for the mother, for the girl, and for the life they had built together, despite the difficulties. It was not wealth or power that had sustained them. It was love, determination, and an unshakable commitment to one another. He realized that helping them would not be about donations or publicity. but about creating a real impact on their daily lives. Giving them support in a way that would be meaningful and lasting. After a long conversation, the billionaire asked, "Would it be all right if I visited more often? I don't want to just provide help from a distance. I want to understand, to see what you need, and to make sure we do it right." The mother hesitated, unsure how to respond. She had spent years protecting her daughter from people who meant well but didn't understand. But looking at the sincerity in his eyes, she nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "We would welcome that." Over the next few weeks, the billionaire visited their home multiple times. He watched the mother as she carried out her daily routines, offering small suggestions without judgment, sometimes helping personally, and sometimes simply listening. He observed the physical and emotional demands placed on her, and he began to understand that his role was not to change their lives overnight, but to support them in ways that allowed them to thrive without losing their dignity or independence. The girl felt a mix of curiosity and cautious optimism. She had spoken her truth at the charity event, but she had never expected the billionaire to engage so deeply. She began to see him as more than a figure of wealth. He was someone who could truly listen and understand. She shared her dreams, small and simple, about attending school with proper accessibility, joining art classes, and spending more time outside without fear of obstacles. Her mother added the practical concerns about healthcare, therapy, and support systems that would ease the constant strain they lived under. Each visit from the billionaire became a learning experience for all of them. He asked questions, took notes, and made careful plans that reflected their real needs. He learned about adaptive technologies, medical care coordination, and even small home modifications that could make life easier. But more importantly, he learned about resilience, patience, and the unspoken strength that came from a mother's love. One afternoon, while helping to move a small ramp into place for the girl's wheelchair, the billionaire paused and said, "I never realized how much you do every single day. It's incredible what you manage, and it's clear that none of it is easy." The mother smiled tiredly. "It's not easy," she admitted, "but I would do it 100 times over for her. She's my world." The girl looked at both of them and felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, it seemed like the world might acknowledge the sacrifices her mother had made, and that they might not have to carry the burden alone anymore. Through these visits, a bond began to form, not as a celebrity meeting ordinary people, but as humans connecting over shared understanding and compassion. The billionaire learned to see beyond the surface, to recognize the quiet heroism that often went unnoticed, and to value the courage it took for a child to speak selflessly for someone she loved. The mother, in turn, began to trust that help could come without strings, without judgment, and without the complications that often accompanied charity or public gestures. The young girl watched all of this unfold with careful attention. She began to see the possibility of a life where her mother could rest, where she could attend appointments without fear, and where they could enjoy simple joys together without the constant stress of survival. It was a new kind of hope, one that didn't rely on miracles or luck, but on understanding, empathy, and action from someone who had the means to make a difference in a thoughtful way. As days turned into weeks, the girl's confidence grew. She began to speak more freely about her experiences, about the things that worried her, and about the dreams she wanted to pursue. The billionaire listened, offered guidance, and sometimes shared stories of his own struggles in ways that made her laugh or think differently. The mother noticed a lightness in her daughter's spirit that she hadn't seen in years. There was a sense that life, while still challenging, might become a little easier, a little more manageable, and a little more filled with hope. Through it all, the billionaire never imposed himself. He never demanded gratitude or recognition. He simply offered support, presence, and a willingness to understand. And in return, he received something rare: the trust of two people who had been cautious for so long, and the lesson that true connection and empathy could have more power than money or influence ever could. By the end of the second part of this journey, it was clear that something had shifted. The girl had spoken her truth, the mother had been seen, and the billionaire had learned that helping was not about grand gestures alone, but about listening, understanding, and acting in ways that truly mattered. The stage was set for changes that would touch their lives in ways none of them could have imagined at the charity event. And in that quiet, ordinary home, a remarkable story of courage, love, unexpected kindness was beginning to unfold. Days passed, and the visits from the billionaire became more frequent. He no longer came as a visitor who observed politely from a distance. Instead, he immersed himself in their daily lives, asking questions, helping with small tasks, and learning the reality of living with a disability in ways most people never considered. Every day was a lesson for him, a step closer to understanding the resilience of the girl and her mother, and the quiet determination that carried them through life. The mother had begun to relax in his presence. She had been cautious at first, worried about what intentions might lie behind the wealthy man's interest. She had seen people who wanted to help only to leave after a brief moment of attention or a photo opportunity. But he was different. He didn't rush or expect anything in return. He didn't offer empty words or make promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he listened. He asked thoughtful questions. He observed carefully and quietly, taking note of the details that truly mattered. One afternoon, he arrived earlier than usual. The girl was rolling herself around the living room, practicing small exercises her therapist had taught her. Her mother was preparing lunch, moving quickly but carefully, so she could balance her own energy while attending to her daughter. The billionaire watched from the doorway, noticing the small, intricate ways the mother adapted the house for her daughter. A chair strategically placed to make reaching things easier, ramps adjusted for smooth movement, and simple changes that made life less of a struggle. He walked over quietly and knelt down next to the girl, looking her in the eyes. "You're working hard today," he said gently. "Can you show me what you're practicing?" The girl smiled, slightly nervous but eager to demonstrate. She pushed herself up and down the room with careful effort, showing how she strengthened her arms and maintained her balance. She explained each exercise in her own words, describing why it mattered and how it helped her in daily life. The billionaire listened with fascination, realizing that even simple movements required immense determination, patience, and courage. He had never considered how exhausting the small things could be for someone in a wheelchair. Her mother watched from across the room, a mixture of pride and relief on her face. She had spent years guiding her daughter through routines that no one else understood. And now, someone who had so much influence was finally seeing the effort, the love, and the quiet struggle behind their daily lives. She felt a hope stirring in her chest, a hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. After the exercises, the billionaire suggested they sit together and talk. The girl and her mother settled on the couch, and he pulled up a chair close to them. He didn't want to sit far away or maintain any barrier between them. He wanted to be part of their world, even if only for a short while. He asked about the girl's schooling and her dreams. She spoke hesitantly at first, unsure if her aspirations mattered to someone with so much power and wealth. But he encouraged her gently, asking what she enjoyed most, what she wanted to learn, and what she imagined for her future. The girl's eyes lit up as she described her love for painting, the stories she wanted to write, and her dream of attending a school that could truly accommodate her needs. The billionaire nodded thoughtfully. "Those are wonderful goals," he said. "We should find a way to make them possible, not just dreams." The mother felt tears prick her eyes. She had always wanted to give her daughter a full life, but circumstances had forced her to focus on survival rather than dreams. For the first time, it seemed that someone was willing to help them look beyond mere survival. Over the next few days, he began to plan quietly, without making grand announcements or seeking attention. He met with experts in accessibility, medical care, and adaptive learning. He asked about equipment that could improve the girl's mobility, therapy that could strengthen her independence, and resources that could support the mother without taking away her dignity. Every detail mattered to him because he wanted to provide help that would genuinely change their lives, not just create a temporary solution or a photo opportunity. Meanwhile, the girl and her mother began to notice subtle changes around the house. Ramps were smoother, furniture was rearranged for better access, and new therapy tools appeared. These small changes didn't overwhelm them. Instead, they brought ease and a sense of possibility. The girl felt empowered, able to move more freely and explore her surroundings with less strain. Her mother felt lighter, as though the weight of constant vigilance was easing. Even if just a little. One evening, the billionaire arrived with a notebook filled with plans and ideas. He sat down with them and said, "I want to make sure the support we provide fits your life, not the other way around. Everything I propose must work for you, not against you." Asked the mother to point out areas where she felt most stressed and overworked. She described the nights she stayed awake, tending to her daughter, the appointments she had to schedule around her own health, and the constant worry that no one would be there if something went wrong. He listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. He didn't interrupt or judge. He didn't offer superficial advice. He wanted to understand. Then he asked the girl how she wanted her mother to be supported, giving her voice equal weight. The girl spoke of her desire for her mother to rest, to eat properly, and to have time for herself, even if it meant asking for help in ways that felt strange or uncomfortable. Her words carried honesty and love, and the billionaire felt a deep respect for her insight and selflessness. Together, they began to make a plan. The billionaire would fund therapy sessions, adaptive equipment, and home modifications. But he also made sure there were provisions for the mother's health and well-being. He arranged for a care assistant to help occasionally, so she could rest without guilt. He arranged access to medical consultations and support networks that she hadn't been able to utilize fully before. Each step was designed to make their lives sustainable, not dependent on charity, but supported in a way that honored their autonomy and dignity. The girl noticed something in the billionaire's behavior that surprised her. He was patient, gentle, and genuinely invested in understanding their lives. He never spoke down to her or her mother, never assumed he knew better, and never treated them as a project. Instead, he treated them as equals, as people with stories, strengths, and wisdom to share. For the girl, this was a revelation. She had seen adults who offered help but demanded control, attention, or recognition. Here was someone who wanted to listen first and act second, and she felt a sense of trust growing between them. One afternoon, as they were reviewing plans for adaptive equipment, the girl spoke up. "I want to go outside more," she said. "Not just in the backyard, but to parks and places where other kids are. I want to feel normal." The mother nodded, smiling, but also worrying about accessibility and safety. The billionaire leaned in and said, "Then we will make it happen. We'll find a way to remove barriers and create opportunities for you to enjoy life without limits." The girl's eyes sparkled with hope, and the mother felt her heart lift. For the first time, the idea of a normal day, filled with small joys and experiences, seemed within reach. Days turned into weeks, and the changes were noticeable. The girl's confidence grew as she practiced mobility exercises, explored her surroundings, and engaged in new activities. Her mother's shoulders relaxed as she received support and guidance that respected her role while easing her burdens. The billionaire continued to visit, always quietly, always observing, always learning. His presence became a source of reassurance rather than pressure. During one visit, he asked the girl to teach him some of her exercises. She laughed and explained patiently, showing him how she strengthened her arms and core. He tried them hesitantly at first, wobbling slightly as he struggled to balance. She giggled at his awkward attempts, and he laughed along, enjoying the moment of genuine connection. It was more than charity or instruction, it was human interaction, shared experience, and the joy of learning from each other. Through it all, the mother felt a growing sense of gratitude, not just for the billionaire's help, but for the recognition of her efforts. She had spent years giving everything to her daughter, and now someone was acknowledging that her dedication mattered, that her exhaustion was real, and that she deserved support. It was a relief and a validation she hadn't realized she craved so deeply. By the end of this period, the house felt different. It wasn't the grandeur of wealth that had transformed it, but the thoughtful, human-centric changes that made daily life smoother and more manageable. The girl moved with more confidence. Her mother rested more often, and the billionaire had gained an understanding of the sacrifice's resilience and love that often went unnoticed in ordinary homes. Through these shared experiences, a bond formed that went beyond wealth, status, or power. It was built on trust, empathy, and the simple act of listening. The girl had spoken her truth, the mother had been seen, and the billionaire had learned a lesson in humility, compassion, in the true meaning of making a difference. By the end of this chapter in their lives, it was clear that the journey had shifted. What had begun as a brief encounter at a charity event had grown into something much deeper, connection that promised lasting impact. Not through money alone, but through understanding, respect, and the power of human kindness. The girl's words, "Don't save me. Save my mom first," had set this transformation in motion, reminding everyone involved that sometimes the smallest voices carry the heaviest truths, and the most selfless words can change lives in ways no one could have imagined. The weeks that followed brought a rhythm to their lives that felt new and yet comforting. The billionaire's visits were now part of the routine, but not in a formal or rigid way. He arrived with no cameras, no entourage, just a genuine interest in seeing how they were doing. The girl and her mother began to anticipate his visits not with anxiety, but with a sense of curiosity and excitement. His presence was no longer that of a powerful outsider, and had become a bridge to opportunities and support they had never imagined. One morning, the billionaire arrived with a plan in hand. He had consulted with professionals, done research, and thought carefully about how to provide help that was meaningful and sustainable. But instead of presenting a checklist of improvements, he approached it differently. He asked the mother to show him what areas of daily life were most exhausting, what routines drained her energy, and what tasks caused the most stress. He asked the girl to point out places in the house where she felt limited, spaces she wished were easier to navigate, and activities she longed to do but couldn't because of obstacles. As the mother spoke, he listened closely. She described mornings that started before sunrise, preparing meals, administering medications, and helping her daughter with exercises while juggling her own health issues. She spoke of the mental toll, the constant worry, and the physical strain of caring for someone who depended on her completely. He nodded, taking in every word, asking gentle questions to understand the nuances, the hidden struggles, and the small victories that mattered so much. The girl, meanwhile, showed him corners of the house that were difficult to navigate. She pointed to a narrow doorway, explaining how it made moving her wheelchair challenging, and a step that seemed small to most people, but was a daily obstacle for her. She spoke about her dreams, to not extravagant ones, but simple joys, like visiting the park, joining a small art class, and having friends over without worrying about accessibility. Her honesty and clarity impressed him. He realized that helping them was not about grandeur or flashy gestures. It was about removing barriers and creating freedom, even in the smallest ways. After listening carefully, the billionaire proposed a plan, but instead of imposing it, he framed it as a conversation. "I want to make changes that actually work for you," he said. "I want to support you both, not take control or disrupt your lives. Let's figure out what makes sense together." He suggested modifications to the home, support for medical and therapy needs, and resources for the mother's well-being. But at every step, he invited their input, making sure the plan reflected their needs, preferences, and dignity. The mother and daughter felt a sense of empowerment they had never experienced. Usually, help came with conditions or assumptions, often overlooking their voices. Here, their opinions mattered. The mother felt a weight lift off her shoulders, realizing she could accept assistance without losing her independence or authority in her own home. The girl felt a sense of validation, knowing her words at the charity event had not only been heard, but had sparked genuine action. Over the following weeks, the changes began to take shape. Ramps were widened and adjusted for smoother movement. Doorways were modified to allow easier access. Therapy equipment arrived, chosen carefully to strengthen the girl's mobility without causing strain. But the billionaire also focused on the mother. He arranged for periodic support so she could rest, brought in professionals to provide guidance on stress management, and connected her with networks of caregivers facing similar challenges. Every detail reflected a deep understanding of their needs and a respect for their autonomy. One afternoon, The girl excitedly wheeled herself into the newly modified living room. The ramps made it easier to move around, and the space felt open and inviting. She laughed as she navigated the room, testing her new freedom and discovering new ways to engage with her surroundings. Her mother watched, smiling, her eyes shining with pride. She realized that the simple act of mobility had brought not just physical ease, but a boost of confidence and joy to her daughter's life. The billionaire observed quietly. Impressed by the resilience and determination displayed by both mother and daughter, he realized that the changes were not just about convenience, they were about creating opportunities for growth, independence, and happiness. It was a lesson he carried with him beyond their home, reminding him that wealth could create impact, but thoughtful. Empathetic action could transform lives. As the home transformed, so did their interactions. The girl began to take small walks around the neighborhood, accompanied by her mother and occasionally by the billionaire, who insisted on seeing firsthand how the modifications improved her mobility. The mother learned to accept help without guilt, finding moments of rest that she hadn't allowed herself in years. The billionaire watched as they navigated the world with newfound ease, recognizing the profound difference that empathy, planning, and understanding could make. During one visit, the billionaire suggested an outing to a nearby park that had been redesigned for accessibility. The girl's eyes widened at the thought, and she eagerly agreed. Her mother, though cautious, prepared carefully, making sure everything was ready for a smooth experience. The day arrived, and as they wheeled through the park, the girl's laughter filled the air. She explored freely, touching the flowers, watching birds, and interacting with other children. Her mother followed closely, a mixture of relief and joy on her face. The billionaire walked alongside them, observing quietly, satisfied to see the practical impact of thoughtful action. The experience sparked a deeper connection between them. The billionaire realized that support was not just about objects, schedules, or modifications. It was about enabling experiences, moments of joy, and opportunities for growth. He learned that the small, human-centered changes often mattered more than grand gestures. For the girl and her mother, it was not charity that transformed their lives. It was understanding, presence, and the removal of barriers that had long restricted their freedom back at home. The mother and daughter shared a quiet moment together. The girl leaned against her mother, exhausted but happy. "I never thought I could do that," she said softly. It felt normal. Her mother held her close, tears forming in her eyes. "You deserve normal," she whispered. "And now we can have it together." The billionaire, observing them from a short distance, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had entered their lives as a stranger with resources, but he had learned more than he had expected. He learned about courage, resilience, and the quiet sacrifices that often go unnoticed. He realized that true impact came not from being seen as generous, but from listening, understanding, and creating meaningful change in the lives of others. In the weeks that followed, the bond between them deepened. The girl continued to explore new activities, gaining confidence and independence. Her mother rested more, finding balance and support that allowed her to care without being overwhelmed. And the billionaire continued to visit not as a wealthy outsider, but as someone genuinely invested in their well-being, someone who had learned that the most meaningful help comes from empathy and partnership. One day, as the girl showed him a drawing she had made of their home and the park, the billionaire smiled. "You've taught me so much," he said. "Not just about what's possible with resources, but about what matters most: love, care, and listening to the people you want to help." The girl beamed, proud that her words and actions had made a difference, not just in her own life, but in the understanding of someone so influential. The mother, watching this exchange, felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. She had dedicated her life to her daughter, often sacrificing her own needs and desires. Now, with thoughtful support and recognition, she could breathe, rest, and experience moments of joy alongside her daughter. The billionaire had not only provided practical help, he had offered validation, understanding, and a partnership built on respect. By the end of this period, their lives had shifted in subtle but profound ways. The home was more navigable, daily routines were less taxing, and opportunities for growth and exploration had expanded. But beyond the physical changes, there was a deeper transformation, a sense of hope, trust, and connection that could not be measured in money or material support. The girl felt empowered, her mother felt supported, and the billionaire felt humbled and enriched by the lessons they had shared. It was clear that the story was no longer just about a charity event or a chance encounter. It had become a journey of human connection, empathy, and action. The girl's simple words, "Don't save me. Save my mom first," had sparked a chain of events that transformed lives in ways far beyond anyone's expectations. It was a reminder that selflessness, honesty, and courage could open doors, bridge gaps, and inspire change in even the most unexpected places. As the sun set on another day, the three of them sat together, reflecting on how far they had come. There were still challenges ahead, of course, but the path forward felt lighter, brighter, and full of possibility. The girl leaned against her mother, feeling a comfort she had not known before. The mother held her daughter, grateful for the support and recognition that had entered their lives. And the billionaire watched, quietly learning that sometimes the most powerful impact comes not from money or influence, but from listening, understanding, and walking alongside those you wish to help. This was the moment when they realized that life could be different, not just easier, but more fulfilling, joyful, and meaningful. And in that realization, they found hope, courage, and the quiet assurance that together they could face whatever challenges came next. The weeks turned into months, and life for the girl and her mother began to settle into a rhythm that was different, yet comforting. The changes that had been set in motion were no longer new or strange. They had become part of their everyday life. The house felt lighter, not because of physical changes alone, but because the weight of constant struggle had eased. The girl moved with more confidence, exploring spaces she had once avoided. Her mother rested more, allowing herself small moments of freedom and relief without feeling guilty. And the billionaire, whose presence had started as a curiosity, had become a quiet part of their lives. Someone who understood without judgment and supported without fanfare. One morning, the girl woke up earlier than usual, a sense of excitement filling her small frame. She rolled herself to the window and looked outside, the sun spilling over the neighborhood in warm, golden light. She had a plan for the day-a-day that was different from the routine of appointments, exercises, and therapy. Today, she wanted to take a longer walk in the park, a place she had visited only a few times, but had begun to love deeply. Her mother appeared behind her, sensing her daughter's energy and curiosity. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked, smiling. The girl nodded enthusiastically, her hands gripping the wheelchair wheels as she prepared to move. The billionaire arrived shortly after, as he often did, quietly observing their preparations. He didn't impose or control the plan. He merely offered his presence and support. Today, however, he had something extra: picnic basket filled with simple foods, blankets, and supplies to make the outing more comfortable. The mother looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and surprise in her eyes. "You didn't have to," she said softly. He shrugged, smiling. "I wanted to. Today is about enjoying life, not just making it easier." At the park, the girl wheeled herself along the smooth, accessible paths, laughing at the way the sunlight danced through the trees. Her mother followed closely, holding her hand when needed, while the billionaire observed, careful to stay at a respectful distance, yet ready to help. For the girl, the park represented more than just greenery. It was freedom, movement, and possibility. She explored corners she had never seen before, reaching out to touch flowers, watch birds, and interact with other children who played nearby. For the first time, she felt what normal life could be like. Even with her wheelchair, her mother watched her daughter's joy, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. She had spent years ensuring her daughter survived, often putting her own life on hold, never imagining that these small joys could be possible. Seeing her daughter laugh freely, discovering the world, and taking small but meaningful risks, filled her heart with pride and relief. She realized that the sacrifices she had made were not in vain, and that with the right support, Their lives could hold happiness beyond the constant stress of care and survival. The billionaire watched quietly, moved by the scene. He had entered their lives with resources and influence, but he had gained much more than that in return. He had learned about love, patience, and the incredible strength found in the bond between mother and child. He realized that sometimes the most meaningful help is not about money or grand gestures, but about listening, understanding, and walking alongside someone as they navigate life. Today was a reminder that his role was not to direct or control, but to empower and support. As the day continued, they found a quiet spot under a large tree and laid out a blanket. The girl unpacked some of her drawings and began to show them to her mother and the billionaire. Each sketch reflected her world, places she wished to explore, people she admired, and dreams she had nurtured quietly. Her mother looked at them, amazed by her daughter's creativity. And the billionaire leaned in, genuinely interested, asking questions about her inspirations and ideas. The conversation was lighthearted, filled with laughter and curiosity, but also carried a deeper understanding of who they were, what they valued, and what mattered most in life. After lunch, the girl suggested a small game. She wanted to race her wheelchair along a path she had mapped in her mind. Her mother hesitated at first, worried about safety, but the girl's determination was clear. The billionaire smiled and offered to keep an eye on the path, ensuring that help was nearby if needed. The girl's laughter echoed as she pushed herself along, the wind brushing her face, feeling the thrill of movement and independence. Her mother cheered her on, proud of the courage and strength she had cultivated. Even the billionaire found himself caught up in the joy of the moment, recognizing the pure, unfiltered happiness that could come from small victories. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, they packed up and began the journey home. The girl was quiet for a moment, reflecting on the day. She realized how much had changed in a short time. Life was still challenging, but it now held possibilities she had never dared to imagine. Her mother squeezed her hand gently, understanding her thoughts without words. They had moved from a place of constant struggle to one of cautious optimism, supported by someone who had learned to listen and act with care. Back at home, the mother prepared a simple dinner, while the girl settled in her room to draw and write about the day. She wanted to capture the feelings, the freedom, and the joy in her own way. Her mother watched her, smiling, realizing that these small moments of creativity and expression were just as important as therapy or mobility exercises. Life was beginning to feel fuller, richer, more balanced. The billionaire stayed a little longer, discussing plans for the coming weeks. He talked about additional therapies, accessible activities, and small improvements that could further enhance their quality of life. But he also emphasized balance, ensuring that help did not overwhelm, that support respected their routines, and that their voices always guided the decisions. His approach was not about control, but partnership, and both mother and daughter felt seen, heard, and valued in the following months. Their lives continued to transform in meaningful ways. The girl attended small classes that accommodated her needs, exploring art, reading, and social interaction. Her confidence grew as she navigated new environments, formed friendships, and expressed herself freely. Her mother found a rhythm that allowed her to care without sacrificing her own health or happiness, and the billionaire remained a quiet, steady presence, offering guidance, resources, and empathy without intruding on their lives. Through all these experiences, the bond between them deepened. It was no longer just about assistance or charity. It was about human connection, understanding, and the shared experience of learning and growing together. The girl had spoken her truth, asking for her mother's well-being first, and in doing so, had sparked a transformation that touched all their lives profoundly one evening. As they sat together watching the sunset from their small porch, the girl turned to her mother and whispered, "I think life can be good now." Her mother held her close, tears streaming silently down her face. "Yes, it can," she replied, "and we will face it together every step of the way." The billionaire, standing nearby, observed quietly, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never anticipated. He had come into their lives with resources and influence, but he had gained lessons in empathy, courage, and the quiet power of selflessness. The days continued to pass, filled with small joys, achievements, and moments of connection. The girl's laughter became a regular part of the home. Her mother found strength and rest, and the billionaire continued to learn from the resilience and love he witnessed daily. The story of their lives had shifted from one of struggle and survival to one of possibility, hope, and genuine human connection. And as the girl grew, she carried with her the lessons of courage, selflessness, and the impact of speaking truthfully from the heart. Her mother carried the knowledge that help could arrive in ways that respected dignity and autonomy, and the billionaire carried the reminder that true wealth is measured not in money, but in understanding empathy and the ability to transform lives with thoughtful action. The journey that began with a simple, brave statement, "Don't save me. Save my mom first," had blossomed into a story of transformation, hope, and connection. It was a story that proved how courage, love, and empathy could intersect to create change far beyond what anyone could imagine. The girl, her mother, and the billionaire had all been touched by one another in ways that transcended wealth, status, or circumstance. As the sun set, they sat together, a quiet sense of peace surrounding them. There were still challenges ahead, of course, but the path forward was brighter, fuller, and filled with the knowledge that they did not face it alone. They had learned that small acts of understanding, careful attention, and genuine care could create ripples of change that touched hearts and lives in profound ways. And in that quiet, ordinary home, a remarkable truth settled in. Love, courage, and empathy could transform lives, bridge gaps, and bring hope even in the most difficult circumstances. The girl's simple words had sparked a journey that would continue to inspire and guide them. A journey that reminded everyone involved of the extraordinary power of human kindness.